welcome Dr. Saleh El Machnouk, professor at University of St. Joseph in Beirut. Welcome to Uncensored.
Thank you for having me, Piers.
I think what's getting lost in the last 3 weeks or so is what has been happening in Lebanon. That's why I wanted you on. A mutual friend sent me a clip of you talking very passionately about what has been going on in the Lebanon. For those who've not been following it as closely as they're following what's happening in Iran, just summarize what is going on.
Piers, first, I'm incredibly grateful to be here, and I'm thankful for you for allowing a voice of the Lebanese people who for 57 straight years have been reduced to footnotes in a variety of regional conflict, ideological conflict, more recently Gaza and Iran, where we are treated, all 5 million of us, either as data by people counting the number of casualties, or simply as a natural consequence or extension of some ideological war. First, it was the Palestinians in the 60s, and then it was the Egyptians, and then it was the Syrians, and then it was Hezbollah, and now it's the IRGC and its proxy. You know, Piers, since 1969, one delusional militia after the other has drawn Lebanon to war against the will of its own people. I am 42 now. This is the 6th war in my lifetime. So what I want to say, using your platform, is that we are officially and irrevocably done as Lebanese people of our land being used for proxy wars. And when I say we, I speak not only in my name, but in the name of millions of Lebanese, an absolutely astounding majority of which refuse to be part of this conflict. Now, some of your viewers might not know that from simply navigating X the entire day and listening to Ideologue, but I brought to you today a poll conducted by Gallup, one of the most respectable U.S. institutions conducting polls in Lebanon. And what does the poll say? The poll say, when they ask, do you believe that the Lebanese army should be the only group that bears weapons and not the militias? 79% of Lebanese said yes. Only 19% of Lebanese said no. The poll asks again, in your opinion, do you favor Lebanon supporting Palestine in each of the following ways or not? When asked about engaging in military conflict with Israel in the service of other causes, 86% of Lebanese said no, only 10% said yes. So our message today is very clear to the world. This is not our war. This is not a war of the Lebanese people against Israel. This is not a war between Lebanon and Israel, between the government of Lebanon and Israel. This is a proxy war fought by the IRGC and its proxy, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and the Israeli government. And we are simply, all 5 million of us, just pawns and hostages in for the millionth time in this regional equation. And we hear constantly, Piers, from people in the West, living comfortably in their living rooms, lectures in morality about resistance and about aggression. You know, when Hezbollah launched these rockets against Israel on March 2nd, you know what they got from the Iranians? They got a thank you from Mustafa Khamenei himself. He thanked them in a letter for entering a war, and I quote, in defense of Iran, despite local obstacles being the Lebanese people. You know what we Lebanese people got? Not just bombs, 1 million displaced, over 1,000 dead, mayhem all over the country, billions of dollars in losses. No, we got lectures in morality from pundits and intellectuals and academics living comfortably in the West who want to use our suffering as Lebanese people for their ideological fantasies. And I want to say today that I want these people to leave us alone, to find other venues where they can express their ideological fantasy, because this conflict is not about their problem in America with Donald Trump. It's not about their views in Gaza, some of which might be right. It's not about the reductive worldview of good and bad. And it's not about some idea that they want to change the world through using Lebanese lives. These ideologues, woke leftists, want to use our suffering for their ideological fantasies, because these people, Piers, are the objective and reasonable allies of the worst elements of Israeli society, the worst elements of the Israeli right. You remember very well, since 1993, when Hamas was bombing the buses, and an extreme lunatic fanatic from the Israeli society killed Ishaq Rabin. Since then, these two powers of ideological woke left, Hezbollah, and the extreme right-wing elements in Israel have been fighting it out at the expense of people in this region, and especially in Lebanon, where it is the will of the Lebanese people and the Lebanese government to put an end to this war. We want these people, as well as the militias, as well as the IRGC, to all leave us alone, to let us live in peace and prosperity.
I mean, incredibly powerful and eloquent statement there. In the context of what you said, do you think there is a justification for what Israel and the United States are now doing in Iran? Do you believe that Iran has basically been propping up Hezbollah, the Houthis, Hamas for decades, and that until that gets dealt with, there can never be proper peace in the region?
Part of what we stand for as Lebanese peers today is to make sure that these regional conflicts, no matter their righteousness or lack thereof, are not extended into Lebanon at the expense of the Lebanese people. Now, if you ask me as an analyst and as a Lebanese, we've seen nothing from the IRGC except assassinations, bombings, radicalization of society, increasing sectarianism, and never-ending wars. So yes, if you ask me, would I like to see the Iranian regime fall down? Would this solve the problems of Lebanon? I would say absolutely yes. But my main concern is not supporting or not supporting the war of Israel and the United States against Iran. My main concern is Lebanon and what is said in particular, Piers, if you allow me, by Western pundits about Lebanon. I've seen a lot of pundits, some of which were guests on your show, all the way from the Confederate of America, 7,000 miles away from here. The likes of Mr. Ugur, I've seen him, and the likes of Mr. Hassan. I've seen them speak about Lebanon. And I would like to ask them a question right here from Beirut, if you allow me. How many Lebanese need to die so you can satisfy your ideological cravings? How many? We keep being pontificated at as if we are children who are unable to decide their own fate and their own national interest. Khalas, as we say in Lebanon, khalas. We want them to leave us alone. I've heard the argument that, Israel is attacking Lebanon and the Lebanese army need to stand by with Hezbollah to fight Israel, as if this is the national interest of the Lebanese. This is not only idiotic, Piers, and shameful, it's counterproductive. And you know how I know that it's counterproductive? Because unlike them, I rely on facts, research, and history to prove my point. We know from history when Lebanon was attacked and when Lebanon was not attacked. If you allow me to show you this study I did, if we can take it on camera for just 2 seconds, I will tell you about these numbers. We know in Lebanon very well, 80% of us, that for 20 years, between the Armistice Agreement of 1949 and the beginning of PLO attacks against Israel in 1969, for these 20 years, we know what happened between Lebanon and Israel. We know that in this 20-year period, do you know how many times Israel violated Lebanese sovereignty in a 20-year period?
Tell me.
82 times, Piers. 82 times in 20 years. Do you know how many Lebanese people died in 20 years as a result of skirmishes between Lebanon and Israel on the Israeli-Lebanese border? In 20 years, 15 people died. Do you know how many people were injured in 20 years? In a whole 20 years, 16 people were injured. That's in a whole 20 years. Why? Because there were no militias in South Lebanon, and the state owned the monopoly of arms. Now, if you compare that very quickly to the era that is often praised by some of these pundits, the era where the resistance was fighting against Israel and protecting Lebanon. In this period, between 2006 and 2026, a perfectly comparable period in terms of time frame, the number of Lebanese deaths, 6,152 people. The number of Lebanese injured, 23,056 people. The number of Israeli violations to Lebanese sovereignty that the resistance was protecting, 62,150 violations. That's a 410 times fold in dead people. And 756 times fold in violations. So the math is clear, Piers. We knew when we were a jewel of the Mediterranean and the Middle East and why that is. We know these facts. We need them to stop lying because of their ideology at our expense. We also know, by the way, Piers, speaking of occupation and aggression, by certificate of UN Secretary General in April 2000, that Israel had left its occupation of every single inch of Lebanese territory. Today, because of the wars of liberation for Gaza and for Iran, about 25% of our territory is not occupied. We also know, as a matter of historical fact, that for 78 years of existence of Lebanon and Israel, despite 20 years of military occupation in the south, not one Jewish settlement was put in South Lebanon. So save us your buzzwords about expansionism and colonialism and settlements, etc. We know our history. And we don't need people blinded by ideology to tell us that we need to stand with an illegal sectarian fundamentalist militia and fight Israel. We don't need to do that. We need to stand with our army to establish Lebanese sovereignty, after which Israel would not be able or willing to attack Lebanon and thousands of people would not die.
Saleh El Machnouk, I really appreciate you coming on Uncensored. We've run out of time. I could have talked to you for a lot longer. Please come back again, because I think...
Thank you for giving me the opportunity
I think you're
to speak as a Lebanese. I appreciate it.
Very powerful and very eloquent, and I can feel your passion. And I can tell you've gone back in history and you've thought about this very carefully.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much.